Welcome to Inside The Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks radio network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside The Mavs. You can download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there also. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel, at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at the same location at Kevin Gray Sports. A lot to get to on this episode of Inside the Mavs as the Mavericks get a bounce-back win over the Miami Heat as they were able to get the 114-108 win over Miami to snap their 3-game losing streak. The Mavericks played with a sense of desperation, especially in the final 3 quarters on the defensive end to really get this important win that they needed to be able to get ready to go on their quick 2-game road trip when they take on the Detroit Pistons and the Chicago Bulls with some momentum, because things were looking rather bleak for the Mavericks based on how poorly they have been playing defensively over the last 6 games. Losers of 5 of their last 6, dead last in the NBA in defensive rating, able to turn things around in the final 3 quarters on the defensive end, outscoring the Miami Heat in the final 3 quarters 86-72 after they had been down by 8 at the end of 1. Luka Doncic with another triple-double as he continues his triple-double streak as he finished the game with 35 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists, his 5th consecutive 30-point triple-double as he continues to make history for the Mavericks and, of course, rewriting the NBA history books, it seemed like every time he steps onto the floor, where the Mavericks were able to get really nice contributions from several guys. And one of the big storylines in this game, the Mavericks making some lineup changes after the Mavericks have been struggling on the defensive end and been struggling with some consistency in terms of the play of a Josh Green, for example. Jason Kidd, the head coach, making a couple of changes in the starting lineup, and Daniel Gafford got the start for Dereck Lively II, and also Derrick Jones Jr. reinserted back into the starting lineup in place of Josh Green. I had reported a little bit early on, talking with some sources over at the Mavericks about how they felt like things were going to be okay and they weren't necessarily panicking from a defensive standpoint, and they felt like Dereck Lively, for instance, had not been the same defensively since coming back, and you give him a lot of credit, especially in the second half. Did a really great job on Bam Adebayo. They were really able to shut him down, especially in the second half, and Dereck Lively was a big reason for that. You say, Kevin, well, he only had 4 points and 2 rebounds in the game. Well, he also was a big, huge factor in the way that they were able to defend Bam Adebayo, who in this game went just 5 of 14 from the field, had 14 points in the game, and at the same time, the Mavericks were able to get really big contributions for him on the defensive end. We'll talk about that a little bit more as the show goes on. But for the Mavericks, they had to get this win as they get ready to take on Detroit and Chicago. You had to get ready to go on that road trip with some momentum, and they were able to finally do so. And while, yes, you look at what Daniel Gafford did in the starting lineup, going a perfect 5 for 5 with the 12 points, you saw the activity, especially on the offensive glass in the first half and on the glass altogether, making a difference in terms of his energy and his activity after especially the first quarter. Gafford really provided an impact for this team. You look at the way things went down. The Heat used a 14-2 run to lead 21-7 with 7 minutes left in that first quarter, where the Mavericks started extremely cold, just 1 of 5 from 3, at one point missing 6 of 7 shots, getting off to a slow start, and you felt like, well, here we go again. The Mavericks off to a bad start defensively, not being able to close out on 3-point shooters, but more importantly, they were getting backdoor cut to death in that first quarter. Luka Doncic getting lost out in space, guys getting behind him, finishing at the rim with easy baskets. The effort defensively and the communication and the trust was not there in that first quarter. The Heat shooting over 71% from the field, a whopping 85% from the three-point line. Duncan Robinson was absolutely on fire with the 11 points that he had in the first quarter. but Luka and Kyrie combining for 17 of the Mavericks' 28 points in that first quarter. They were able to cut the lead to 5, going on a 12-2 run of their own to get themselves back into that game, because it felt like Miami was about to run away with things as far as the game went on, but the Mavericks were able to climb themselves back in it, especially toward the end of that first quarter. And then you go on to the second quarter, the Mavericks started to turn things up defensively, and that was something that I wanted to see. I had tweeted out earlier on in the day before the game that I wanted to see if the Mavericks were going to be a team that would be able to come out and punch the Miami Heat in the mouth. Well, the Mavericks took the best punch of the Miami Heat in that first quarter, were able to withstand it, and then started to punch back themselves, especially on the defensive end. The Mavericks started 4-6 in that second quarter. In the first 3.5 minutes, they were able to cut the deficit to 5. Daniel Gafford was able to get the game tied with a bucket at 50. The Miami Heat then went back on a 5-0 run to reestablish a lead at 55-50. But the tone and the feel of the game changed in that second quarter. I mentioned how Daniel Gafford, after what was a bad first quarter, really picked things up from the second quarter on, and his activity was palpable, especially in that first half. Once you got beyond that first quarter, Mavericks were able to stay in it, really getting to the free throw line, got 13 free throw attempts, knocking down 10 of those. That really kept them in that game in the first half in the second quarter, because both teams only shot 33% from the field, 28% from three. Both teams were extremely cold, as the Mavericks in that second quarter only scored 26 points, but they held Miami to 22, and that became the difference in the game. How the Mavericks were able to get things together defensively, getting back out on closeouts and rotations, being much better in those areas, and you saw the difference that it made. And then again, the activity of what you saw from Daniel Gafford, especially in that second quarter and beyond. The Mavericks forcing 4 turnovers in that quarter, scoring 5 points off of those turnovers. But again, the Mavericks, as poor as they have been defensively over the last 6 games, dead last in the NBA defensive rating, this was something that had to change going forward, regardless of opponent. How are you going to respond? By being better with your communication, your trusting of your teammates to be able to make the read and rotation to close out on shooters, being able to fight over the top of screens, fight underneath screens, do the kinds of things, the little things on the defensive end that make a difference. And the Mavericks started to do those things in that second quarter, even when they had a chance to tie things up, with Dante Exum missing a dunk. At one point, Derrick Jones Jr. missing a dunk, Daniel Gafford missing a putback dunk. Things weren't necessarily going the way that the Mavericks wanted to offensively, but they didn't let go of the rope. And that's been something that we've been talking about with this Mavericks team when they faced adversity. They were down by as many as 15 points in that first quarter. They could have easily let things get away from them, but they didn't. They stuck with it. They continue to play and stay within the course of the game, and they continue to chip away at the lead that the Miami Heat had, and eventually things were able to turn around, especially when you get to that third quarter, because the Mavericks really were able to turn things up in that third quarter on the defensive end. Teams were trading baskets early on in that third quarter, but then the Mavericks were able to use an 11-3 run, a huge 11-3 run over 3 minutes, to be able to take a lead at 69-68 with 6:20 left in that third quarter. Kyrie Irving was a big part of that. He tied the game, knocking down a three-pointer in transition. Kyrie Irving, again, knocking down a jumper that eventually gave the Mavericks the lead. By the way, that 69-68 lead, that was the first lead of the game that the Mavericks had against the Miami Heat. Tim Hardaway Jr., he saw one go down as well. We know how much he's been struggling as of late. But what you saw in the third quarter was a team put together a terrific defensive effort. And as you go by some of the numbers just in that third quarter alone, just to give you a better picture on how it went down there, the Mavericks were able to force a couple of turnovers. The bench played well, outscoring Miami 9-3 on the bench points, getting out in fast break and transition. I talked about the Kyrie Irving 3 that he was able to knock down in transition. You outscore them 8-0 in the fast break. So you're forcing turnovers, you're pushing the pace and getting out in the fast break and converting in transition, and you're turning things up on the defensive end. And then, of course, Luka Doncic was absolutely sensational in that third quarter. We mentioned a little bit earlier the 35-point triple-double that he had. Of course, his 5th consecutive 30-point triple-double, continues to put up mind-boggling numbers, rewriting the NBA history book every time he takes the floor. And he was on one in that third quarter, going 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 5 overall from downtown as well. He was able to get the Mavericks to lead at one point at 74-71 with just over 5 minutes left in that third quarter. But he continued to set the tone. I mean, he had 17 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, doing a little bit of everything in that third quarter to really push the Mavericks from an offensive standpoint as well. Got another 7 points, as we mentioned, with Kyrie Irving knocking down some big shots in that third quarter as well. So what you saw was that the role players being able to get the Mavericks in it. And then, of course, Luka Doncic is really taking over in that third quarter and really handling the business from there. And then on to the fourth quarter. Look, the Heat are a terrific basketball team. You saw, and we talked about a little bit earlier, the run that they were able to go on to take that 21-7 lead. The Mavericks punching back and making a run of their own. Miami did not fold after being down by 8, as the Mavericks were able to take an 8-point lead into that fourth quarter. The Heat opened up the fourth quarter on a 14-4 run to take a lead of their own. But that is when Dante Exum was able to really help down the stretch and being part of the closing lineup. We talked about the changes that Jason Kidd made to begin the game, inserting Derrick Jones Jr. and Daniel Gafford into the starting lineup. But it was Dante Exum down the stretch, knocking down big three-pointers in that fourth quarter and really stabilizing things, not only in the offensive end in support of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, but also on the defensive end as well. And you give the Mavericks credit. They were down by 1 with just under 4.5 minutes left in that fourth quarter. But it was Dante Exum who knocked down the go-ahead three-pointer with just over 3 minutes left in the game. And the Mavericks never looked back from there, using an 11-3 run to take what would be eventually a 7-point lead with just a minute left in the fourth quarter, able to seal it, with a 114-108 win. But it was Exum who really played well, his best game since coming back and dealing with the knee injury and the heel bruise. Like, he's been dealing with quite a bit. And you saw early on in the regular season how well he was playing, knocking down three-pointers, providing length and athleticism on the defensive end. He's not on a minutes restriction anymore, as Exum pointed out after the game. And you saw the difference that he was able to make in stabilizing that Mavericks offense in that fourth quarter. When you look at some of the numbers from that fourth and final period there, Mavericks only allowing 25 points. Yes, they only scored 23 of their own, but only allowing on the defensive end 25 points in that fourth quarter. And when you look at what Dante Exum did, was a perfect 2 of 2 from the field in the near 9 minutes that he played, 7 points, got to the free throw line a couple of times. It was able to convert there. And he was the leading scorer in that fourth quarter. But again, it was the timeliness of the shots that Dante Exum was able to make in that game, including a jumper that had the Mavericks up by 7 with a minute left in the game. Of course, Kyrie Irving burying a huge three-pointer in the left corner to extend the Mavericks lead to 5 with just under a minute and a half left. Again, timely shot making, and you saw how much of a difference that was in the fourth quarter. Mavericks shooting 40% from 3, making threes late down the stretch. And we know that the Mavericks, when they're good, they're defending and they're knocking down shots from the outside. And that was what the hallmark was, especially as the game went on, that the Mavericks were able to do. And what impressed me most about this particular game in and of itself, even if you feel like things haven't necessarily turned the corner yet, I wanted to see if this team was going to respond to a Miami Heat team that was scrappy, that was not going to give in despite being down at times in this game. As we mentioned, going into that fourth quarter down by 8, but able to make that 14-4 run to take a lead and punch back at the Mavericks. How were the Mavericks going to respond to the adversity that they were going to be facing throughout the course of the game, where Miami was trying to continue their continued strong play as well? The Mavericks responded time and time again, and that is the thing that you can take with you if you're a fan of this team about what can happen moving forward. Again, I'm not saying that they're about to go on a 5-6 game run, but they needed this game. I was talking to someone before the game, and they asked me, what's the chances that you believe the Mavericks are going to go on a 3-game win streak with Miami, Detroit, and Chicago in the next 3 games? And I said, yeah, it's a 60-40 shot that the Mavericks can go on a quick 3-game run here, but they got to win tonight. And tonight, referring to Thursday night, and being able to beat the Miami Heat. And for a while there in that first quarter, it did not look like it. I talked about it a little bit earlier. The defensive communication and rotation was horrendous. A lot of backdoor cuts, a lot of guys getting lost in space, not being able to handle pick and roll situations in that first quarter in terms of their pick and roll defensive coverage. It wasn't happening. You saw them getting killed in drop coverage. We know that this team gives up more points than any other team in terms of drop coverage. So you saw all those things playing out in that first quarter, but they were able to make the adjustments as the game went on, getting much more physical and being able to put themselves in a position where they were actually able to close out on shooters and making things difficult for the Miami Heat. And more importantly, you knew that Miami wasn't going to keep up the kind of shooting that they did in that first quarter. So being able to wait them out and being able to take their best punch and then move forward, you give the Mavericks a lot of credit for being able to do that. And again, down the stretch, Dante Exum being a part of that closing lineup in the fourth quarter really brought some stability based on what the Mavericks needed to win this game. So a good win for a team that desperately needed it. As you look at the Western Conference standings based on the way things went on Thursday night, the Sacramento Kings were able to get a comeback win, were able to finish it off, I should say, against the San Antonio Spurs, as Domantas Sabonis was able to get a steal late to get a bucket to get that win for Sacramento. The Golden State Warriors took a surprising loss at home to the Chicago Bulls. So the Bulls doing you a favor before you get to thank them in person here in a few days. So as you look at the Western Conference standings now, Mavericks at 35-28, Golden State at 33-29, Lakers at 34-30. They're sitting in 10th. And then, of course, just above you, Sacramento Kings there at 36-26 by getting the win, their second straight win, as they beat the San Antonio Spurs. So coming into the game on Thursday, the Mavericks and the Warriors were actually tied in the loss column after the Warriors had beat the brakes off the Milwaukee Bucks just the night before. You saw how things continue to tighten in the Western Conference, especially in the play-in situation, and a loss against Miami would have been devastating given the fact that this Western Conference, these bottom 4 teams here in the play-in are jockeying for position right now. But as it stands, you're now a game and a half clear of both the Warriors and the Lakers when it comes to the 9 and 10 spots in the Western Conference. So not just an important win for the mojo and getting things back on track from a mental standpoint, but also a big win in terms of trying to keep some of your competitors at bay, knowing you still got 2 games against the Sacramento Kings. You still got 3 games against the Golden State Warriors, including the first game when you come back after taking on Detroit and Chicago. These are the kinds of things that you had to do in order to get a win against Miami. And another note that stands out for me in this game against the Miami Heat, you are now 18-8 if you're the Mavericks in clutch games this year. That is tied for the best clutch record in the league. When things have gotten tight in ball games, you have been able to find a way to get wins most of the time, going 18-8. You were also able to get your 5th win of the season when trailing by at least 15 points. Again, not letting go of the rope, not allowing this team to put you away when it felt like the Miami Heat were ready to try and make this thing a lot more worse than it could have been. As the game went on, the Mavericks were able to withstand all of that, and you get a nice comeback win at home. You're able to win a game in the clutch again, proving that you can handle these things in the clutch as you've done so far this year. But more importantly, now you were able to stop the bleeding for the moment, and you got back to the thing that you saw you were doing during your 7-game win streak, which was defend at a high level. And yes, I know Miami isn't necessarily a great scoring team. It hasn't been a great scoring team throughout the course of the year. But one thing that they have been doing extremely well over the last 14 games, which was crashing the offensive glass, a team that has had an opportunity to be able to make things difficult in terms of rebounding. And the Mavericks, when you look at this game, they were able to out-rebound the Miami Heat in this particular game. So you give them a lot of credit for being able to handle their business the way that they were needing to in order to get this win, because in a lot of ways, it felt like the sky was falling for the Mavericks in terms of what had not been happening in terms of winning games for them. When you look at what the Miami Heat has been able to do, as I mentioned, on the defensive glass, seventh in the NBA in defensive rebounds, averaging nearly 35 defensive rebounds per game during their last 14 games, which I mentioned were 11-3. And in this game, you were the Mavericks. You were able to out-rebound them in the course of the game. As I get the number here, I promise you I'll get you to it. 45-37. So you out-rebounded the Miami Heat by 8. You were able to take care of things on the defensive glass. You tied them at 35 on the defensive glass, so you're cleaning up just as much as they were, but you had 10 offensive rebounds. You were able to get some second chance point opportunities in this game, and you were able to capitalize on them. And that's exactly what the Mavericks were able to do, and they needed to do so, outscoring the Miami Heat 16-5 in second chance opportunities, which was huge, and you could tell was a part of the big difference in the game as well. So for the Mavericks, you out-rebounded Miami. You were able to take care of things on the defensive glass, being even with them, knowing how well they had been cleaning up on the defensive glass. You were able to get and out-rebound them on the offensive glass 10-2, and you converted on those second chance opportunities 16-5, outscoring them by 11. So that's a big way to respond based off of what they had not been doing over the last several games. And now you snap that 3-game losing streak before you get ready to take on the Detroit Pistons on Saturday, then facing Chicago after that as part of that 2-game road trip. So all in all, an important win, a win that was needed for the Mavericks to be able to get some confidence back, but more importantly, being able to do it and show themselves that they could do it on the defensive end. As I mentioned, outscoring the Miami Heat 86-72 over the final 3 quarters after being down by 8 to begin that second quarter. That's huge for them to be able to prove themselves on the defensive end, that the defensive principles that Jason Kidd, Sean Sweeney, and others want them to run, they're capable of doing it against a good Miami Heat team that has been playing really well over the last 14, 15 games and really had a chance to beat you in this game, but you were able to withstand the adversity that came with it to be able to move forward from there. So the Mavericks now, as they get ready for their next couple of games on the road, sit there at 35-28, 19-15 at home, where they haven't been able to protect home court as well as you would like them to. Yes, I know they're 4 games above 500 now, but you would like to see that home record be padded a little bit more. Now they've got to go do it on the road, and they should be able to handle business against Detroit and Chicago. Not to say that Detroit and Chicago are not providing you competitive games. As I mentioned earlier, Chicago was able to beat Golden State on the road. Chicago being able to handle business there. The Detroit Pistons being able to get a win against the Brooklyn Nets. They get to 10 wins on the year as well. So I know Detroit isn't a good team, but Cade Cunningham's a baller. You know how good he could play. And Chicago, while yes, inconsistency is the name of the game for the Bulls, it's a team that can beat you on any given night. So Mavericks cannot take games off now that we are under 20 games left in the regular season. Every single game is important now, given what the Mavericks have got to do to try and somehow claw their way out of this play-in situation and hopefully into the top 6. Because now you got 19 games left, 5 of those against Golden State and Sacramento to help you be able to have an opportunity to move up in the Western Conference standings. But you got to be able to handle business because you still got games against Denver, games against Oklahoma City that you've got to contend with as well. Denver getting a really, really nice win at home over the Boston Celtics and what was the game in the night on Thursday. So the Denver Nuggets playing their best basketball right now as they look to climb to get to the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Some bad news for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl Anthony Towns got a torn meniscus. He is going to be out for a significant period of time as well. So again, all the injuries that the Mavericks have been dealing with throughout the course of the year, we will see about the health of Dereck Lively II, who I don't want to not mention, as I did a little bit earlier, about the defense that he played, especially in the second half on Bam Adebayo. He was absolutely terrific. While, yes, the counting numbers and all those things weren't necessarily there, it was his impact on the defensive end that was felt throughout the course, especially in that second half. And really, one of my favorite possessions being able to have Jimmy Butler was able to make a bailout jumper on the right side to be able to get a bucket from Miami. But you saw the defensive activity of Dereck Lively the second being able to get out in coverage, get out in space, and be able to handle himself well on that particular defensive possession, and acquitted himself well as he continues to grow and work through the quote-unquote rookie wall that he may be experiencing a little bit. So definitely want to give a big shout out to Dereck Lively the second and the way that he responded, because as a rookie, you've been able to establish yourself in the starting lineup. You were able to get to, the All-Star weekend as part of the Rising Stars and all this. And you're having a terrific year if you're Dereck Lively. But to be able to be a professional and to be able to understand what the team needs of you in this particular moment, and then still respond against one of the best centers in the NBA with a lot of versatility and a lot of game in Bam Adebayo, Dereck Lively II was terrific in this game and deserves a ton of credit for his maturity and his ability to grow, learn, but also execute what needed to happen in that game against Miami to be able to help them get the win, because they needed his defense, and he played extremely well against the Miami Heat in that second half. So for, again, Dereck Lively, really nice game for him coming off the bench and providing what the Mavericks needed. Jason Kidd talking about that after the game as well. So again, Mavericks get a 114-108 win over the Miami Heat, move to 35-28, get ready for 2 games against Detroit and Chicago before they come home to take on the Golden State Warriors. We will see about the health of Stephen Curry over the next couple of days as well to give us a better idea of what that will look like. We will see about the health of Dereck Lively II as well, who bumped knees toward the end of the game. We will see what his status will be. Jason Kidd saying we'll learn more about that going into the weekend before they take on the Detroit Pistons on Saturday. So something that we'll monitor as well as I continue to bring you the latest when it comes to your Dallas Mavericks. So again, good win for the Mavericks. Needed it. Got back on the winning track after losing 5 of 6 and 3 in a row in that stretch there to win against a game Miami Heat team at the American Airlines. There are a lot of good things that they needed to do. They did, and were able to find a way to get it done in front of the home crowd that was desperate for a win. Early start time. Wasn't a lot of energy in the building to start off with, but the Mavericks were able to find the energy that they needed to get the win, and an important one as well. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, you can download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating. Write a review for it while you're there. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. I'm your Mavericks pre- and post-game host for all Mavericks radio broadcasts on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. And if you watch this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, you can also like and comment on the video and subscribe to my channel there. Mavericks get a gut check win, 114-108 over the Miami Heat to get a huge win moving forward. I'll be back on Monday to recap a big weekend in Mavericks basketball as they take on the Detroit Pistons, and we'll see where they are by the time they get back to the American Airlines Center when they get ready to take on Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors. My name is Kevin Gray. This has been Inside the Mavs, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. I'll talk to you later. Peace.